Our second speaker has over 35 years of experience and has served in key leadership positions from lieutenant to general, and has been stationed in locations from Georgia to South Korea and from Alaska to North Carolina. He also has combat tours in both Iraq and Afghanistan. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the privilege of introducing the Commanding General, the United States Army Forces Command, General Michael Garrett.
All right, well, good morning, everybody, and hope everyone out there can hear me. And as the chief said, I would much rather be with all of you at Building 4 in that big auditorium. We'd probably start off like we did last year with about 30 hand release push-ups to get us going. But I trust that all of you did your PT today, and I will do my best to follow up, a really, really good and informative, kind of discussion with the Chief of Staff of the Army about where we're going. Last year was the first time I attended one of these conferences, and found it very, very useful for a number of reasons. One, we talked about war fighting. We brought together, really all of the Army, not just TRADOC, FORSCOM, Army Materiel Command, Modernization Command, but we brought together all three of our components. The active component, the Guard, and the Reserve. And I knew from my time at ARCENT how important the Guard and Reserve are to what we're doing in the Middle East. But what I've learned over the last year is how vitally important the Guard and Reserve are to our ability to meet our requirements on a day-to-day basis. And I'll talk a little bit about that as we go along. As the Chief mentioned, and as I think I shared with all of you last year, when General Milley conducted my initial counseling with me, he said, Mike, you are responsible for the readiness of our Army. And we had a little bit of time for that to sink in terms of its significance, and really thought hard about, not necessarily readiness. I mean, we've all been responsible for readiness at the echelons that we've been responsible for. But when you start talking about the Army, when you start talking about Forces Command, which really on any given day is responsible for all of the deploying forces, all of the forces, minus, some of the elements maybe in PACOM, minus some of the day-to-day elements in EUCOM, but the active Reserve and Guard forces that meet our worldwide requirements, do so under FORSCOM training guidance, under FORSCOM, in some cases, resources. And so that has been something that, has been reinforced, and something that I've also learned over the last year or so. The last time we were at Fort Benning, I think I followed Scott Efflont, who was providing a glimpse of the yet to be revealed at that time Army lethality. It's actually a 3-corps lethality study. And it was really, interesting for me because, what it did was it provided, more than just commanders' insights and intuition as to, the state of readiness in our Army. I've been accused by some of my very best friends of being maybe a little bit too myopically focused on being excellent at the basics, but it's really good to be convicted when you and your boss are in perfect alignment. And if you listen to General McConville, you heard him talk about how important individual and small unit excellence and mastery are to real readiness. I spent a lot of time intel-wise studying the Russians and Chinese. If you look at the pacing threats and what we get from our military, and I tell you, I hope that they're spending a lot of time studying us. And what I hope they, over the last year, what their intel folks are telling them is that our Army, the United States Army, although has always been excellent, is really getting better at the point of contact. We're really getting better at our small unit levels. The Russian people that are, or guys that are kind of watching us over there in Europe are talking about how disciplined our folks in Lithuania are, how, at all echelons, from our individual to, our battalions that are over there, disciplined, fit, cohesive teams, because that's where real lethality is. You can't, lethality is not something that you can talk about. Lethality is again, I think, is winning at the point of contact. So General Donahoe, thanks again for allowing me to be here. And as I said before, you're going to hear me really kind of expand on, the point of contact and what that means to me. And when we get to questions, I'd be interested in your thoughts here. When I do talk about, winning at the point of contact, I'm not just talking about, the infantrymen or the tank crew. I am talking about all of the warfighting functions. I'm talking about all the MOSs. It's easy for me, as I was sitting there in Europe last year, to kind of survey the environment there. And as the commander said, this is going to be, at least at the tactical level, which is going to drive the operational and strategic theater kind of level operations. These are platoon and company fights. I mean, if you just look at the terrain, what we need to be able to do, our tanks need to be able to acquire, engage, and move on to the next target faster than, our adversaries' tanks. And that doesn't happen without a whole bunch of practice. Our field artillery crews, need to be excellent in the actions that allow them to deliver accurate, timely fires. And that, again, doesn't happen by accidents. Our cyber, operations specialist, neutralizing, a web-based threat in a timely manner is not going to happen and does not happen by accident. And I really do believe the foundation of lethality in our Army rests with our individual soldiers and our individual soldier lethality. And here's a picture for you. So I don't know if it was last week before, I was out at the Joint Readiness Training Center. And normally I work my way through all the talks and get out and see some of the training, but I made a deliberate effort this time to connect the dots from the brigade through the battalion, through a company, down to a platoon. And what I found was that the platoon, right? And at this level, that platoon represented the point of contact. Was really suffering a little bit because of the flailing, and that's my word, that was going on, above them. When I talk about mastering the fundamentals, that's a battalion staff that's mastered, or a brigade staff that's mastered the operations process. A staff that, a commander and a staff that is able to integrate, the warfighting functions and bring them to bear, so that when we put our soldiers, our tank crews, our Bradleys, against the enemy, we've done everything that we can to provide, to set the conditions for their success. If you go to the first slide, so this is, I don't know that there's any contention here. But this represents a shift from, what I inherited as the FORSCOM commander. And I tell you, like all of you, I did my commander's assessment. What I found was, kind of what we all know. General Abrams and FORSCOM were moving the readiness enterprise in a very positive direction. We had gained, levels of readiness that we hadn't seen in years, and much of that was due to the operational requirements, the op tempo, and all of the other things, that take our time. And what we had was this gated training strategy, that you see to the left here. And this gated training strategy, was driven by, Army force generation, driven by the requirement to, either 350-1 or 2 requirements to work your way, through these different echelons of training. We threw in, more requirements in there to drive a little bit more precision, and we call that Objective T. And although we never really formally implemented Objective T, it drove a lot of what we were doing. I mean, when you went to training briefings, they were basing their assessment of untrained, proficient, or trained based on Objective T measures. And what I saw, and again, this is Mike Garrett, and almost 36 years of actually it's over 36 years of service, and all of the excellent units that I have been in, and there have been a bunch. They have all been focused on individual mastery, putting time against ensuring that our soldiers were as fit as possible, and we challenged them every day physically, putting them into environments that were disciplined environments, and then making them feel like they were part of the team. And that's the cohesion. And those 3 things, are kind of what we seek in all of our elements. But if you look at the foundation of all of our readiness. And again, I'm talking, tactical, operational level readiness here. I mean, it really is the individual, and then followed by, teams, crews, teams, and squads. I mean, those are the foundation that they serve the foundation of everything that we do. And regardless of the order, if you trace it down to the point of contact, there's going to be some soldier there who's going to execute that, and that soldier is going to be part of a team or a squad. And so, we talked about, reps and sets, and we talked about multiple iterations, but we really, in some cases, we were just talking about it. We were focusing more on getting through our training gates so that when we got to the Ntc rotation, we met the requirements there to conduct, brigade level maneuver under live conditions. And, quite frankly, and again, this is not just Garrett's observation, this is feedback that I got from many of you, during my first few months in command. And it was, we were not as good. We did not spend, the time because we were, we felt like we had to move on. The other thing that, and it's part of our training doctrine, and it's certainly been a big part of, my background, but I can remember being out at the National Training Center, and I was very, back then it was Jeff Broadwater was the commander out there, and I'm sitting there talking to him, and I'm watching this brigade level attack onto a MOUT site, an urban site. And, as you can imagine, they're working their way through the breach. And, before the infantry could get out for the most part and deploy, the OPFOR had stopped them. And so, I kind of watched all of this and just listened, and I tend to think out loud. And so I did a little bit of that with the folks there. And, my point was, certainly, this is a good discussion for our after action reviews and information for the units to take home. But, there are some things that are probably important enough for us to stop what we're doing, conduct a quick AAR, and then retrain that task until we get it right. Because, getting it right is important, and getting it right, I think, is more embedded more indelibly, on the brains of our soldiers and leaders than what we get out of all of our AARs. And so retraining tasks, doing them over and over again is a big part of this, and time is a big part of this. The other thing that I picked up as I moved around too, that impacted on our ability to do this. If you remember, 3 years ago, from the Army, we identified that we had some challenges in the training base. And so we moved soldiers out of Forces Command and they needed to go there. I mean, it was the absolute right decision, and we've made some tremendous progress over the last couple of years because of it. But we moved soldiers to our initial entry training sites or basic training sites to assist, our drill sergeants. And we moved soldiers into recruiting. And those soldiers were very, very important to our ability to meet our accessions missions. But boy, what it did was it caused an imbalance, between in our Army between the operating and generating force, and we're feeling some of the effects, and we have been feeling some of the effects of that, over the last couple of years. And so the turbulence inside of our formations, the constant in some areas, in some units, the constant movement of people, was not helpful. And then you add to that the requirement to fill our SVABs. The Chief talked about multi-domain task forces. Some of you know that we got 5th Corps that's working towards. They've already been activated and working towards their operational capability. All of these take talent, take people, take talent. And we are sorting our way through that. The challenge, though, for us has been stabilizing leaders in our formations. Big for many of us is at E5, E6, and in some cases E7 later. You can't know your soldiers, you can't train them to excellence, if you're only there for 18 months. And then if Sergeant Major Sims, was here, Sergeant Major Sims would remind all of the officers out there that, our sergeants come out of our battalions, all of them, and that's where they start. And so we need to make sure that our promotion boards and those things that we're doing inside of our battalions, lead to the selection of the right soldiers, to be the leaders that we need. Go to this next slide. Talks a little bit about tactical readiness, and here, another, and this shouldn't surprise anybody, another area that we are a little bit uneven in terms of our competence is training management. When I listen to units try to explain to me, what causes some of the challenges that they have, what causes, all of the movement, all of the change, what causes, a commander, or a soldier to be surprised when he shows up at work Monday that he's going to the field, as opposed to knowing it, 4 or 6, however many weeks, our training management process, asks for us to do. What we also have to do is we got to do a better job, and this is really something for all of us. I think I mentioned last week I think it was either Paul Funk that I was talking to. Paul and I talk a lot, and I think I shared with him that for years, and not for years, for the last couple of years in this job, I have been assuming a level of confidence and knowledge and expertise at echelons, echelon of command that, quite frankly, in all cases did not exist. And so, a few weeks ago, it dawned on me that, I've got to be a little bit more prescriptive, a little bit more specific in the guidance, that I give, because, division commanders, corps commanders and division commanders, certainly they have it. But I tell you what, if you think about how old our brigade commanders are now, you think about our battalion commanders, they don't they did not grow up in the same kind of training environment that those of us that are a little bit older grew up in. Someone talked earlier about, the importance of the direction that our Army started moving in 1973, and manifests itself, in the Big Five, airland battle. And when I came into the Army in 1984 into the 24th Infantry Division, that's what I fell in on. And I'll tell you what, that mechanized infantry unit that I was in could train. My battalion commander, and I still remember him, Colonel Graney, that guy smoked cigarettes, and I'm not sure he even did PT, but I tell you what, he could fight the hell out of that battalion. We were working through. We had, I can remember in Korea, the first 2ID Warfighter, or a couple of years later. So all of those things, and not being not having the combatant command requirements that we do on a day-to-day basis allowed us to train to a level of proficiency, that, allowed us to not only win the fights that we had fought, but to make them like they should. And that is, not fair for us. Go to the next slide, please. What I want to do here is just take a little bit of time to reinforce some of the things that the chief talked about. And I added this slide this morning. I actually thought about it as I was working out today, and one, I want to reinforce what our boss said about building cohesive teams, about the importance of people in our Army. I am responsible, and I love the job. Here at FORSCOM, we are responsible for readiness, and our Army is, with COVID and everything else that we've had to contend with, our Army is as ready today as we were, arguably this time last year. And that's because of some tremendous work by, commanders. Many of you represented are sitting out here on this session today. I mean, absolutely tremendous work. I recognized about a week into, COVID, our COVID, mission analysis that, my job would not allow me to telework either. And, for me to maintain, the granular tactical level feel that I needed for the Army, or at least the portion that I'm responsible for, I needed to be out there. And so in my travels, I found that, probably at the battalion level and below, there is no such thing as telework. It's no work. You're either working or you're not. That soldier there in the middle, in some cases, is the person, for the last, think about now, we're into our 6th month of this, but, it's a soldier there in the middle of this slide, that has probably been, the most neglected. The chief talked about, these 3 things off to the left there that break trust with the American people, and, those things that harm our soldiers. I'll tell you, readiness takes up certainly a lot of my time, but I tell you, I've been spending a lot of time on sexual assault and harassment, suicide, and racism and extremism, over the last several months. And I'm sure many of you have too. This is, and some of you are like, well, what does this have to do with what we were talking about earlier? Hey, that guy there in the middle is where lethality starts. And our investment in him or her, our care of him or her is, what drives, the soldier there in the middle to be everything that we need him or her to be in order for us to be successful. What we have had, and again, this isn't everywhere. I'm a pretty simple person, or try to simplify things. And, one of the things that I've learned over the last couple of years is, units with a DROS, right? So Think about Europe, think about, Hawaii, think about Alaska. Units with a DROS tend to do better at our training centers. And I think some of that is a little less turbulence inside of their organizations, a little bit more time to focus on, gaining proficiency and mastery. They generally are not being deployed. That's not in all cases, but generally not being deployed. Everybody else, so, inside of FORSCOM is either preparing for a deployment, returning from a deployment, in some phase of modernization, or preparing, to modernize. I don't know that there's a unit outside of that. And so paying attention, to our soldiers is something that all of us should think about. Think about this. Last week we had a soldier, and this was these were. I'm not even sure exactly where this one was, to be honest with you. But what struck me about this is, as we kind of worked our way through this, the first time the unit leadership talked to the parents was to pass along their condolences. And that can't happen. That is not a cohesive team. We really have to figure out, how do we, with our leader, so that section or squad leader, how do we ensure that, they are properly trained to provide the example that we want for our young soldiers? How do we ensure that, the buddy, down there, the roommate, the battle buddy, the friend, is armed with and feels empowered to intervene? And then, how do we ensure that our soldiers and our units, remain connected with, our families and their families? Like I said, the reason I wanted to at least talk a little bit about this today is because it is really, really, really important. And it's one of those things, it's so important that, again, I told you the most precious resource, I think we have is time. And what I've done inside of Forces Command, we published an order last week. And, the name isn't all that great. It's called Foundational Training. And we're providing a day a month to units to get after these things listed here. To get after providing time, for our leaders at echelon to do things that build cohesive teams, to do things that allow them to know their soldier better than they know them today, to allow their soldiers to know their organizations, in a way that is outside perhaps of their daily duties. So we're doing that one day a month is what we're dedicating towards this. And as I told you before, I made some assumptions last year that I'm not making this time in terms of, allowing people to figure out some of the stuff that I want them to do. This is where, again, my experience and the experience of our leaders today are different. I got a phone call this afternoon with Specialist Freeman. Specialist Freeman is a soldier that I met on my trip to one of my recent trips to Fort Hood, who said, "Hey, my mom and dad live in Fayetteville." I said, "Hey, send me their number. I'm going to give your mom a call and tell her that I ran into you and that you were doing well." I do stuff like that all the time. But again, I'm surprised to learn that in some cases, the first time we talk to parents, and again, this is, I'm sure these are not representative of what we're doing across the Army, but they're certainly instructive. All right, the last slide is, I think, opens this up, for a few questions, and so I'll stop there and do my best to answer yours.
Hey, sir, good morning. This is Colonel Chris Budahas. I'm the Chief of Staff. I'll be facilitating the question and answer period at this time. Sir, first question from the field is the following. For all the right reasons, it seems that the Army focuses much of its effort on the lowest echelons of warfighting. What is your thoughts about the future roles of the division and corps staff? How do you foresee the Army effectively training division and corps staffs to fight near peers in the future?
Yeah, we're, the same way that we've always done it, I think, with maybe modernizing as we're doing right now. our training centers. So, we still have the 4 DIRT CTCs, but we also have, our Mission Command Training Center. And I tell you, what we're doing in terms of updating, refining our warfighter scenarios, that's important. What we're doing to incorporate our partners and allies and to work through, it's hard for us to work through many of our digital mission command systems amongst ourselves. It gets harder when you start talking about being able to easily move from one combatant command to the other, which is what we're going to have to be able to do in the future. I mean, that's really the essence of dynamic force employment. And think about then, again, the challenge and the level of difficulty associated with now doing that with partners and allies, where, now we have, security, classification requirements, that may challenge us. Hey, am I still on?
Sir, you're still on.
Okay, good, because my screen changed. So we are updating our warfighter scenarios. The date scenario that we're using is consistent with the current OE, consistent with peer competitors or near peer competitors. And they are, we're trying to make them more challenging, but I get good feedback from folks over there, and we still have a ways to go. The other thing that we're doing is, and I don't know that this is a first, but Ntc Rotation 2010, which is coming up, will be a division-focused effort out at the National Training Center. 1st Armored Division is going to fight as a division headquarters. And this will be a live, virtual, constructive environment that they're going to operate in. And we're getting at just what you talked about, operating at the division. And I'm not sure if there's going to be any core level participation in this one. But that's the direction that we're moving in. So we are moving there. But here again, I want all of you to think about what makes a good division staff. A bunch of really talented majors and some lieutenant colonels, right? That can execute the operations process, can integrate the warfighting functions. And you know where that comes from? That comes from, lieutenants, having good majors that can train them at the battalion level. Company commanders kind of watching, battalion and brigade commanders and staffs do things right. So anyways, I know that's more than you wanted on that, but we have recognized that, the future probably will not be, the future fight will not be with the brigade as the unit of action. It's going to be the division, the core fight, and we're working our way towards that now.
So our next question from the field is the following. Given our current or future threats, we'll need to exercise in a high intensity contested environment more than just in a CTC rotation. When do you foresee the replication of capabilities or challenges at the home station like cyber, jamming, electromagnetic signature, and such?
Yeah, we're doing some of that now. I think some of it is challenged by, the environments that we live in, the laws that we have. For instance, I can remember at Shaw Air Force Base when I was down at Arcent, we had this pesky UAV that would fly over the airfield every now and again. And I said, hey, why haven't we shot that thing down? And they said, because it's illegal for us to do that. I think we have some of the same challenges too when we start talking about the different domains and how we replicate them at our home station. We are building. I know General Murray, and maybe he'll talk about this, but we are building and working our way through cyber ranges. And I think some of those exist right now. I'm not an expert on it, but I think some of those exist right now. We are looking at areas right now. The National Training Center is probably the best environment that we have to replicate some of the anti-access air denial systems of our adversaries. So, we will continue to modernize and keep up to date our training centers, our DIRT training centers. We will continue to modernize, our warfighters and try and replicate, the highest end of any of our adversaries out there. And then also look at, and this goes along with our modernization efforts. And it's not just, if you're looking at the different domains. We're going to bring on weapon systems, mobile protected firepower, for instance, and we're going to put it on places where, tanks generally don't train. And we're going to have to figure out, how to do that. And we got to start getting after some of that now, because it requires, potentially additional funding, as we modernize our facilities to keep up with the modernization of our force.
So our next question from the field is the following. What conventional and special operation forces interoperability issues concern you the most as we prepare to compete with and potentially go to conflict with near peers?
I tell you, I think this is an area where we've made a tremendous amount of progress. And again, maybe a little more narrowly focused than the entire globe. My almost 4 years at RCENT, and a couple and a half years at CENTCOM, what I watched are high-end SOF, or, for lack of a better term, or GP SOF, and then our general purpose forces. I tell you, those relationships and their ability to operate was, it was effective. And it was done with an ease, that I didn't remember, when I was, in the Ranger Regiment and doing a little bit of this, or, having watched, in some of our theater security cooperation activities, our SOF and general purpose forces interact. So I really do think we have made a ton of progress, and I attribute a lot of that to, for instance, USASOC and General Baudet. Every single CTC rotation, I can't speak for JMRC in Europe, but I tell you what, at the National Training Center, Joint Readiness Training Center, our warfighters, there are SOF units on the ground, part of the training audience, and they are interacting, every single day with our forces. So I think we're moving in a great direction there. I think what's really going to be helpful, and it's one of the interesting things that I've kind of watched come out of the development of our security force assistance brigades and units, is this delineation of duties between our SOF forces and our SBAPs. And again, more narrowly, than I would like, CENTCOM and what we're doing there with our SOF, with our SBAPs, with our general purpose forces. But, I can reflect back on a recent Dan Walrath, United States Army South Commander SITREP, on what he's doing, with SBAPs down in South America. So I think we are moving in a great direction, and we just need to, continue to manage, the tremendous relationship that we have right now between USASOC and FORSCOM and the rest of our Army. I really do think that, what we're doing right now is pretty special. And then the last thing I will tell you is, our SOF forces are incredibly special too. What, we've been able to do, around the world, has been, eye-watering, to say the least. So anyways, I hope that scratches a little bit on the question that you asked.
Yes, sir. Our next question for the field is the following. Sir, could you unpack or discuss, and I quote, tailored readiness, unquote, a bit more? I'm assuming prioritization and focusing on critical tasks aligned with mission sets.
Yeah, thanks for asking me that, because it allows me to once again to reinforce the fact that I really and I mean this. I mean, nobody, nobody's really challenged me on this yet, but I really mean it. And people that are watching this that remember, I don't think there's anybody on here unless you're an old guy or gal that remembers, Captain Garrett from Alpha Company 375. But I tell you what, the older folks that remember, maybe Blue Falcons here in the 82nd, 425. Tell you, every unit that I've been with, it started with the individual, and then it was mastery of small unit, skills. When I talk about tailored readiness, and when I talk to audiences like this, so it's a little bit more than focusing on mastery, focusing more on winning at the point of contact. This tailored readiness for me also. You heard the chief talk about the importance of our money and the resources that we have going forward. And I have said that and I try to think about everything in terms of a zero-sum environment. And as the chief pointed out this morning, it's worse. It's that's the best environment that we're going to operate in. And so I think about how do we the question on Mike Garrett's mind on most days is, how do we provide the exact amount of readiness that our nation requires, and not, one tank engine, not one, spare part more, because all of that money that we put against readiness that we don't use is money that won't go against our modernization requirements, won't go against our reform requirements. And I do believe that, the future is going to be tough. And so, tailored readiness, precision readiness, readiness, I think, as we look at it going forward, is going to require all of us to really, and especially as long as, Mike Garrett is in this position, and I keep hammering it, inside of Forces Command. I mean, it's okay. Train at the squad and platoon level. And I tell you what, if you train at that level and you have squads and platoons, and crews, regardless of MOS and warfighting function, that are excellent on their systems, we're going to win. We're going to win. I see it at, the training centers. We're going to win. And so I'm okay with that. But the tailored readiness thing is a little bit more than just, specific. It's really thinking a little more broadly about how we deliver, readiness in a more precise way, so that, we don't waste money and time against readiness that we're not going to use.
So our next question for the field is, the Marine Corps has recently modified their infantry squad design, and as the Army prepares for multi-domain operations against near-peer threats, should the Army look to redesign our infantry squad with technologies that are being recently fielded? And should we look at the size either to increase or decrease the size of the infantry squad?
Yeah, I will allow, I think Jim Rainey's talking tomorrow, and he and I have sparred over a number of things, and some of the future design updates, that he's going to share with you tomorrow. I think we'll get after some of this. Here's where I am right now. I mean, I personally think that the squad sizes that we have right now for the formations that we have are right. Our challenge is they're just not all manned. Our challenge is, and again, it's not as bad. I had Rick Porter, the FORSCOM G1, give me the statistics, and they were not as bad as, kind of what I saw or what I see when I go out. But, about 20% of our squads are led by E5s, and that number is a little bit higher or lower. When you start looking at, below him, the team leaders are specialists, and then the platoon sergeants are staff sergeants, first sergeants, or sergeants first class. That's a challenge for us too. So, I've done a lot of thinking about, the optimal squad size And again, I'll let General Rainey kind of talk to you about that. But where I am today is, how do we get the most out of, the striker, the mech infantry, the light infantry, squads and formations that we have out there. I mean, I think if we man them and we can keep, leaders in position and we can work them through our foundational training, they're going to be as good as anybody else. I do think, though, as we look at, new technology, so, rifles that double the range, double the accuracy, I think all of those things are going to be important. I think about IVAS. I mean, IVAS is a tremendous capability. I remember when I was battalion commander, we were testing for the Army the Land Warrior system. And what Land Warrior gave you was a heads-up display, a moving map, and situational awareness on however many people, if you were a squad leader, your squad mates, give you the platoon. And what I thought about and kind of what we did with that was, it allowed a platoon to operate offensively at night. So think about infiltration on a company or battalion's worth of frontage with, pretty good situational awareness in terms of where individuals were at any given time. So deconflict direct and indirect fires, identify penetration points, those kind of things. It was a tremendous, I thought it was a tremendous capability. And I don't know if the Army's still screwing around with Land Warrior, but what we didn't do was we didn't buy it back then, and we continue to experiment with it. What I like about our modernization strategy and what General Murray and his folks are doing. I mean, we're not perfect in this stuff, but I tell you, they have a great plan. They got that is resourced. Commanders are, taking necessary and prudent risk, on some of this stuff. But I tell you, when I think about a platoon or company, IDAS equipped, what that allows them to do, it's game changing at the tactical level.
Sir, thank you very much for the presentation. Any final remarks?
No, again, winning at the point of contact, has been a focus of mine, and it's nothing more than telling everybody out there that it's okay to do 2 hours of PT every day if your soldiers are getting stronger and they're getting faster and they're getting more fit. It's okay to spend a day or two on the fundamentals of marksmanship. It's okay, to say no. Battalion commanders, to push back on your brigade commanders to push back on your division commanders when, the guidance that you're getting from them is outside of what I'm telling you right now. Because, the most precious resource that we have is time. And, managing and allocating that very precious resource is what, we expect all of our commanders at echelon out there to be doing. And then, the last thing is, as our chief said, I am incredibly proud of our Army. There are a number of challenges that we are dealing with every single day. But, we have to continue to focus on and prioritize people because people are what allow us to win. And as you have heard from our boss, winning matters. Thanks, everybody.
Sir, thank you for your remarks. For the group, as a reminder, please back out of this session and then click on Major Donna Hughes' presentation.